Hello everyone, welcome back to BlenderDiplom.com. This is Gottfried Karl Heinrich Hofmann speaking, and this time we are about to recreate a very famous effect from some very famous movie, so let's go! So here we are right inside Blender, and the first thing we're gonna do is rename the scene we're currently into something like Hologram. And that's because in this tutorial we're gonna use multiple scenes. The first one will be a scene that's only using the compositor. So let's switch over to Compositing, check Use Nodes, and of course Backdrop, and get rid of the render layer. Why get rid of the render layer? Well, because we only want to use a video as an input. So how can you add a video as an input in the compositor? Well, it's not that clear. You have to hit Shift A to add a new input, and then not render layer, but image. And here you click open, and if you choose a video file, it will automatically detect that it's a video file, and then you will have this effect that here the source is set to movie now, even though we want the node is called image. And as a source you can have a file, which would be an image, a sequence of images, a movie, or a Blender generated source. Now the next thing we need to do is check auto refresh and add a viewer node. And here we got it. And let's select the range of frames we want to use. And in this case I used 500 frames of animation. And now if I change the position in the timeline, everything works fine. So the next thing we want to do is we want to key this, but let me just do a very small preparation, and that is I'm gonna add a distort node and there scale, and that's one thing you don't really need to do, but I'm using this to scale it to the absolute size we're gonna use for our composition, because very often, depending on your source, you will have pixels that are not exactly quadratic, and by scaling it to the absolute value you can solve this problem easily. So this is just something I got in my general keying setup in Blender. And also here in the dimensions for the final render I choose HDTV 720p. So this is exactly this 128 T1280 by 720. Now the very next thing is let's do a simple key. And yeah, that's right, you can key in Blender, and it's pretty powerful because look at the source, it's totally crap. Yeah, I don't think one could actually pull a decent key, but you can pull a key that's good enough for us, thanks to Blender's extremely nice keying capabilities. So look here, it's bad lighting. Actually, I didn't use lighting at all because my lighting kit broke down and the green screen is totally crumbled. The story behind this is that I went to a friend of mine who's got a key green screen studio, and we did a really perfect keying setup, and I stood there and talked the intro for the tutorial, and it was really perfect, very good lighting and everything. Then I came home and thought, it's not that cool what I'm talked, and it's just not right. So I skipped that, threw the files away, and went down to the cellar, to my cellar, grabbed my personal green screen and grabbed it, got upstairs, found out that my lighting kit was broken, and so I thought, well, screw it, I'll just put it behind me, stand there, talk a little, and then let's see if Blender can pull the key, and it can. See? Let's add a matte, and let's not use a difference chroma or color key, but a channel key. And now let's see how it's looking. Let's turn on the alpha, the RGB colors, and it's already starting to key. The color space is RGB, which is very cool, and let's choose the algorithm single. So now we can key the channels against each other, and of course we key green because because our green screen is green against another channel, and let's see, it should be either red or blue, which one works better. The low value should be the green one, and it's already gone pretty much. And let's also reduce the high value a little to get here a more decent key. But to see this, whether the key is good or bad, we need to separate the RGBA, and that is here on the converter, and take a look at the alpha channel. So let's grab the alpha channel, connect it to the viewer node. Oh, to the viewer node, not to the composite. And yeah, we got a decent key with not too many problems. Let's get rid of this down at the bottom here by increasing this a little more. And it's already starting to burn in, but I think it's okay. And let's see how it's at different positions. Yeah, that's okay for our purposes because we can live with a sharp line behind the hairs, because this is just gonna be a hologram. So one thing I still want to slightly get rid of is the green stuff around the hair, because of course that's not that cool. And we can easily do this by adding another node, and that's the color spill node. And we're gonna add this to the original image. Get rid of this effect down here, that's something that went automatically. And here, yeah, we're also already reducing the green a little, and compared to the original result, that's already quite good, of course. Let's see, let's use the average as an algorithm, yeah, to get rid of even more, and yeah, that's already quite good, and it's perfectly enough for our example, because we still want a little line around our hologram for later on. Now let's go on and recombine those two things, because that one only, and recombine this image with the original key. So let's add a color alpha over and lose the alpha channel as the no, not alpha over, color set alpha, and that's in filter converter set alpha. That's it. The alpha comes from here, the image comes from here, and now things are perfect. Next thing we want to do is we want to get rid of all those colors, because our image will just be of one. It will generally be a black and white image, which we're gonna color later on. So let's add a color hue saturation value, and let's completely remove the saturation. Now it's perfectly black and white. And now let's see how this is going. Yeah, and it's going pretty good. Yeah, should be a decent result. And one thing I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna shift select all those nodes. Here I'm gonna add group and create a group. So now we got a group node, this is our key, and it's perfectly hidden, and if you want to see what's inside, just hit tab and it's going out, and tab again. So and don't forget here we have to set the hue saturation to the output here. So now it's perfect. Now it's perfect. By the way, if you want to see things down the bottom, just hit F12 to do one render. And here we got it, and if you choose to see this just with the alpha channel, just hit this and bang, here we got it with the alpha channel. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna separate the RGBA once again, because we're gonna add a matte. And usually in this case you'd use a roto Bezier to get rid of the stuff on the left and the right, but in our case it's a lot simpler, because you see the guy is perfectly in the middle and we want it to be cut down here anyways. So let's use a perfectly round matte. And where can we get something like this? Yeah, over here in the textures panel. So let's just grab this texture and call it circle matte. As a type I'm gonna choose blend. Here it is, blend. And it's not linear, we want it spherical. Let's add a ramp, make things bigger. And now let's add a texture node as an input. So input, texture. Let's grab the texture here, the circle matte, and up here separate RGBA once again. So converter separate RGB, oops, wrong. Add converter separate RGBA. And let's multiply the alpha channel with the texture node. So color mix, and we'll choose the above one. Now if you got mix, we got this setup here. So let's switch it. Oh, and haha, something I forgot. I'm on a resolution of 720 times 720, so it's a perfectly quadratic thing. So let's, yeah, here we got it. Now let's switch those back again. And let's see what's happening if I choose multiply. Yeah. The white ones multiply with the white ones back to 1, and the darker ones are going darker. And you'll also see that the bottom here of the background here is perfectly black, so we won't have any problems later on when we put things into action in the actual 3D scene. So we got our perfect matte. So let's recombine things. So once again, set alpha, color, converter, set alpha. And this one is going to be the alpha. And the image is of course still up there. And now, perfect. And let's see how it's looking in the bottom. Yeah. Wonderful. And now let's go on with setting up the actual hologram effect. But before we're gonna do this, I think it would be very smart to add a scale node for later. It's in the distort scale. Let's keep it really relative. And that's because we later on want this guy to start small and become bigger, so it plops out of nothing and then it returns. And that's of course something we're gonna use later on, so let's keep it just as it is. And the very next thing is let's add an effect like there would be some noise or distortion in the video, because the hologram effect is a video-like thing, and that has some sort of distortion. So what we need is another texture. It's cool that we can add all those textures up to the default cube and not use them at all. So let's use new, choose noise, and that's it. Call it noise, and let's add another input, texture, and use a noise. We use the noise texture. And if you take a look at it, yeah, it's very small, this noise, but our final effect will have rather big lines in it, so we need to make the noise bigger. So let's add a distort scale node and then scale it relative. Oh, scale it relative. And let's say into the y direction by 4. And what's gonna happen? Here. And now x also by 4. Yeah, this is starting to look much like TV noise, and it's changing over time. You can't see it here, but in the actual render it will change. But I'll make it in a way that it's a little broader than high. This takes ages. And let's not use the color, let's use the value. Because this will be of a lot more contrast. Yeah, this is more like TV noise, right? And now let's add another multiply node. So mix, choose multiply, and we need once again to mix the original one with the new one. So let's put this down, put this one up. Let's see how it's looking. Yeah, we already see a little bit, but I guess yeah, I'd say the effect is a little too strong, so let's go down like this. That's enough. That will be enough for a hologram. And now the next thing I'm gonna add is the TV scanlines. So how do you create scanlines in Blender? So a very easy way to create lines in Blender is to add a texture and choose wood. And here we are. Here we got our lines. And now let's see if you need to change anything. Well, I don't think so at the moment. Let's just add them to our composite. So wood. And now let's shift A input texture once again. And here we got the wood texture. And of course it's a little big. So let's change the scale a little. And for this I'm gonna use an input value, because the scale has three values, and this value input will change them all. So let's add value to scale. And now we see that we need to change that quite a bit by making it bigger. We add more lines. So let's set it to 20, for example, and you might have seen that the lines have now changed, because without the value, they are diagonal, and with value they are vertical. So what we need now is a distort node to rotate it. Goes up there. So let's go here. By the way, let's choose the color for this. Rotate it, and let's not change the degree by a value, but set it directly. It's just 90. You might have changed. So now, yeah, here we got those typical TV scan lines. And now things become very easy, because we just once again need to multiply it over our original image. So once again, image on the top, the other thing onto the bottom, and let's multiply it. Set it to multiply, and now we need to find a good value, and I say let's increase the fact value a little so the effect becomes stronger. So maybe 1 might be a little strong, or well, we'll see once we are changing the colors. Because of course our hologram is blue, and that's why we need to change the color to blue. Currently it's black and white, let's colorize it. That's pretty simple, add color balance. Yeah. Let's connect it here. So select the viewer, and now let's start to change the colors a little for all 3 parts. And yeah, I think that the dark parts should also have some kind of blue. And yeah, next thing we want to do is add a bit of glow and other things. And that's because the part where the scan lines are at the rim of the current hologram, and there's a very sharp edge, and I want this to be more like that the lines are fading out. So let's add a blur node, so filter blur, and blur it just in the X direction, and let's choose fast Gaussian. And X direction, let's say blurred by 8 in the X direction. And then let's add the simple glow by choosing another filter and blur. We're gonna blur this by, first of all, let's blur it flat. And this time we're gonna choose once again 8 on the X, but also 8 on the Y. And when we combine this one with the one that we blurred just where we just blurred the edges, then we ought to have a pretty good mix. But what we need to do is, so let's select add instead of mix, so it becomes a little brighter here. And this is also becoming a pretty good hologram. Well, let's switch this here and turn the fact value up to 1, so it becomes a little brighter. So yeah, this is our hologram, which we can insert into the scene later on. But there's still one thing I want to show you, because it's a bug in the current 2.57 version of Blender. But since I did not want to use a recent build for this, let me show you how you can come over this. And that's the problem with the scale node currently. Because when I used this effect, I started from frame 100 to 115. I wanted it to plop out of nothing. So I set a keyframe for the scale at frame 150. So hit I to keyframe these. And now, if I choose 0 at the scale, Blender would crash, or Blender 2.57b is gonna crash. So I'm gonna set 0.01 on both sides, 0.01. And now we just got this very small dot. And if you got a more recent build of Blender, the bug is now fixed because I reported it. And that's something you should always do. Report every bug you can find, because usually the Blender guys are gonna help you. And in my case, it was that I reported it on the one day, and at the morning of the next day, the bug was already fixed, and the fix was already in the current SVN. So the most recent builds on Graphical all have the bug fixed. And this is something that is really cool about Blender and open source teams. The bug fixing is very fast, so even if you're in the production, always report the bug. And what I'm going to show you now is just for the guys who are still using 2.57b, and that is a workaround to this problem, because we want to get rid of this very small part here. So how can we do this? Let's just add another. So let's just work on the alpha channel, yeah. So let's once again converter separate RGBA at this, and let's do it at this point. Things have changed quite a bit here. And here I'm just choosing the alpha channel and mix it alpha channel and mix it, so we have to set it up with pure black. So you can set this down here, you can mix stuff with pure black. And now let's, for example, go back here and see how this is looking. Yeah, by a factor of 1 it's completely gone, and by a factor of 0 it's completely there. So for frame 115, let's set it to 0, I, and for frame 100, where we don't want to see anything, let's set the factor to 1, I, and that, let's see. And I see if I forgot to set the keyframes for scale, so let's set it to 0.01 and hit I to insert a keyframe, and here also 0.01. And let's also once again hit I to insert a keyframe, and now when we get through this, it's becoming bigger, and if we reset this by hitting a filter, converter, set alpha, we also got rid of this problem with the crash. So let's go back to use the original image here, zack, and the alpha of the one where we mixed it. So we got nothing at the beginning and something after the small animation, and use this one to insert this into the color dialogues, and now we're finished. We got our hologram without a crash. We worked around the bug. And what's left? That's to export everything. So let's select output, PNG, and don't forget to hit RGBA, because we want to export this as including the alpha channel. Then let's select the range. In this case it's 500 frames. And a good tip for the output: if you want to output your stuff, your blend, and everything, your animation, directly where the blend file is, hit 2 times slash, so it's double slash, and this will save the output directly in the directory where your blend file is. And then give it the name of a directory, for example tut.holo.finished, and that's now the name of the directory. And now let's give it the name of the file. So this is our file name. I'm still adding a small dot, so the automatic numbering Blender is doing will be added after the dot. That's a little better if you're later doing the importing. And now let's hit render animation. And of course you see nothing at the beginning because it's completely alpha, but you can select this and to see the actual RGB image, and there you see the very small scale dot. And if you watch this long enough, up to frame 150, we'll see the blue guy pop up and get our first part, our hologram. So yeah, the tut is finished, and once again I also showed you a little bit of extra stuff, like working around the bug with the scale, or that you always should report bugs and everything. Thanks for watching, and I hope you liked it. The next part will be about how to integrate the hologram into the actual 3D scene by using a image sequence as a texture. So stay tuned and goodbye.